myself down here. Share screen. Share screen. Hi, everyone.
Hi.
Is this me up here? I wonder why my face isn't showing up. I guess I'm Emeritus Department, but I don't know why my face isn't showing. Oh well, we do this every time. Start video. Here we go. There I am. Hello. I had to be in the room with the air conditioner today. It is hot outside. How's everybody doing?
Good.
I can't hear. I have most people on mute, and that's okay. If you're not muted and you want to mute yourself during the talk, you're more than welcome to. Sorry, Judy, I don't know why I have your face big on my screen. I'm trying to fix it right now. Share screen. I'll just go here. So, if I share that screen, can you still see our faces?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, great. Let me just play this. Okay, actually, sorry about that. Let me back out here. Share a different screen. I'm going to share this screen first. Okay, so first I'm going to just talk a little bit about, I changed it up today because we had already done an artist that were on still life, and I just wasn't feeling excited about it, and I wanted to do something that I felt really excited about, and that is lately I've been looking at Francisco Goya. I saw some of his wonderful little watercolors in Mexico. They had a really great Spanish show going on there with some Velázquez and Goya and things like that. So I was feeling inspired by that, and I changed it. I hope nobody minds. I will get to Ruth Miller and Cezanne next semester, but I wanted to not repeat a theme that we had already done, so that's why I decided to change it. And so today we are talking about Francisco Goya, and he's from Spain. He was born in Fuentedotos, I don't know, April 16th, 1828. Oh, and he died in April 16th, 1828 in France. He had a pretty interesting life, and there's a lot of speculation about what went on during his life. We don't have a lot of information about his childhood, so one of the only things we do have information about is where he talks about right here, his lifelong friend Martin Zapata and him would write some letters, so that is some of the only information that they have about him as a child. But some things to note about him is that he became pretty well known. He studied as an artist. He was living a pretty great life, painting portraits for the rich and famous. Let me just make sure my phone is not going to buzz. And then something happened. He got sick and he lost his hearing, and that is when he went deaf, he started to have a much harder time, and he sort of went into depression, and that's when he made this much more dark series of prints, some of which we're going to look at. He's known as a master for his prints, his etchings, lithography, that kind of thing. They're just beautiful, and I think I'm really drawn to them right now because I've really been thinking a lot about tone, and he is a master of tone. If you want to know what I'm talking about when I talk about grayscale and tone, we're going to look at some of his prints today, but he is really someone to look at if you want to know how to understand tone, and by that I mean how on a grayscale, tone is the mood. It's how light or dark something is. And tone is, the words we use to describe tone are tints. Tints is how much white something has in it, and shades, which is how much black something has added to it. So how much black is added to a color or to a grayscale. So we're talking about, what I'm talking about is tone, which is also known as value, which is also sometimes referred to as the mood of the painting. So all three of those things, some teachers use them interchangeably. Some teachers only use one of those words. It's something that sort of baffled me for several years until I finally figured out that all these teachers were talking about a similar thing, but no one really said that because everybody has their own vocabulary and way of talking about artwork. So just on that and about drawing, even though I am going to show paintings as well, I think his drawing skill was unique, and he had such a style that you can pick out Goya out anytime you walk into any museum. You know immediately when there's a Goya, just based on his figures. The figures are really unique to his style. So anyway, he wasn't doing so well, and when he went deaf. He married. Before that, he had several children. He really loved his only son, who became ill at one point, and that really threw him for a loop. And then at the end of his life, he sort of moved himself to Paris, and he lived alone. He lived in solitude, and that talks about that right here. He moved to the outskirts of Madrid on a farmhouse to La Quinta del Sordo, which is the house of the deaf man. And that is where he completed the 14 black paintings, and they were painted right onto his plaster walls. So there's a lot of speculation, did he go crazy? Was he already crazy? Is he crazy? I don't know. You can decide for yourself. I think all artists have to be a little wild, I'd say they use a different part of their brain more than other people, is what I've experienced as far as artists go, and their ability to sort of navigate in the world and also make their art. It can really be a really hard game to play, and sometimes it gets the better of these artists. The next artist we're going to talk about today is a woman named Goya Glantzman. She is a really interesting character. She lives in New York City, and she's from Long Island. If you get a chance to watch any of the videos of her, she loves to ramble on, and she gets pretty obsessed with ideas, and she was very obsessed with Goya at one point, and even did an entire show based on her transcriptions of his drawings and prints. And that was also up at Betty Cunningham Gallery. She's another artist that shows at Betty Cunningham Gallery. I guess Betty Cunningham and I have similar taste, because I tend to love all the artists that she shows. So Goya Glantzman, she was born in Long Island. She graduated from the Rhode Island School of Design. She was really big into the art scene in the 80s in the East Village, and she still lives there in the Lower East Side in this amazing little house that's it's an artist stabilized housing, which there's very little of now, but that's one way to live in New York City, is find an apartment that's rent stabilized and never move again, which is what she has done in order to keep her apartment and be able to live her life as an artist. I know that she worked really hard, and she made very little money, and she worked really hard just to spend as many hours a day as she could painting and drawing and sculpting. She does a lot of sculpture that she uses for her drawings, and she also just makes sculpture, but she ends up drawing her sculptures a lot as well. So I guess she's been showing at Betty Cunningham Gallery for the last 8 years. She had a 30-year retrospective in 2009. She did work at the New York Studio School, which is where I went to school, which is how I met her. And she's one notable thing about her as well, besides being included in the Whitney Museum Art. I don't know. Okay, this grant right here is called the Anonymous Was a Woman Foundation, and for you female ladies out there who are over the age of 55, I believe you have to be, it is a grant for female artists. So Judy, Tarya, Marina, all of you wonderful, fantastic artists should apply to this this foundation grant. It's called the Anonymous Was a Woman Foundation Grant. Google it, pops right up. I was looking at it earlier today, and I hope to apply someday too. And the Paula Krasner Foundation grant is another really good grant to get if you want to look into that one as well. But I know they give about 20 of those, and it's a big chunk of money, and it could allow you to paint for a long time. So maybe try to get one of those if you want. Okay, so now I'm going to share the Can everybody see the PowerPoint now? Let me just make sure. Resume share. Now can you see it? Bring your share window. No. Stop share. Okay.
Yes, now we see you.
Oh, now you see me. Okay. Now I'm going to move this here. Okay. Now can you see the PowerPoint?
Yes.
All right. So the way I usually set these up is I have the older art history artist on the left, and I have the newer contemporary artist on the right. And what we can see here is two portraits of women. Goya made a really nice living making these portraits of high-end people in society. This one looks like Adele to me. He looks just like the singer Adele, but it is not Adele. And Judy Glantzman copied many of his portraits as studies, and then she went on to create hundreds of little portraits just from imagination and from other artists. I've noticed she's really into transcribing other artists' work as a learning experience, but also as another fine art experience. So it's not very often that you see another artist fully copying the other artist's work, but in such a different way that it becomes its own thing, and then it is then able to be in galleries and that sort of thing. So I think you can see right away the talent that Goya has, and just his application of paint is so wonderful. It's painterly, but it's a portrait. It's realistic. We get the idea of what kind of woman this was in society. She's beautiful, and just the way that he's described lace is something that to this day, just baffles me. The way that he always describes the textiles. And then you have Judy's little piece, and she has made hundreds of these little portraits that are about 5 by 5 inches, not very big at all. And I'll show you another grouping of those right now. Okay, so here's another example of portraits, although this one I believe is a maid in this picture. And who's this? This is an actor. I don't know who he is.
Peter Falk.
Okay, Peter Falk. Thank you, Judy. And then this is not a cleaning lady like this one, is it? Or a maid sort of lady. This is a higher end woman in society, and you can tell because she's got her fur coat on and her red. Red was a sign of status. And then again, you can see the lace is just so translucent and beautiful in the way that he describes these people. And he really captured a likeness of their essence. And so that's why he was, over and over, he was asked to paint more and more portraits. Let's see if I can move this over just slightly so that there, I can hit the button anyway. Okay, so this is one of Judy's paintings on the left here. Oh, I put them backwards. Sorry about that. On the left is Judy Glantzman. On the right is Goya. And what we can see here is a lot in these pictures. They're floating. This is the witch fight right here on the right, and this painting I don't know the title of right now. But actually, I thought it was including this room, and now I see that it's panels in a room. And these figures are on these different panels, but they're sort of floating in space, even though they're on a ground. And so are these. I just love the way that he captures these figures on the. Move us over. I'm always fighting with this thing. I wish I could just show my face, and I can't. It won't. Well, okay, that's fine. That's what we're gonna do. We're gonna do that for right now. So. You can see, again, there's a lot of symbolism in both of these works. There's a lot of mystery to them. And so my theme for the day is not portraiture. It is not painting. It is more about artists who like to paint grotesque things. It's about artists who choose to paint the good, bad, and the ugly. In one of the interviews that Judy Glantzman she's talking about how we're living in a society where there's a war happening, and we're just not even pretending, we're pretending that there's not a war, rather. So it's about these things that no one wants to talk about and no one really wants to show. And that is also what Goya is doing in his work. He has a lot of these narratives. They're very mysterious, but they're dark. And you can see that there's a lot of things going on in this imagery that is not necessarily comfortable or easy to look at. And so that is why I think it's brave and interesting. And they've done it in a way, both of them, that is sort of, in ways, I don't know if ugly is the right word, but you know, we're not painting Rococo, fa la la, pretty perfect paintings here. We're painting meaningful things that are happening in society at the time, that are marking what's happening with their personal lives, with politics, with the world, and it's coming through in a pretty intense way. I don't know all the meaning of all of these paintings. Again, if you go on khanuniversity.com, that's Khan, they do little video clips on pieces of art, works of art, and you can watch several on Goya that are pretty interesting, where they're talking about his making some of this work. So Cyclops is, or sorry, this isn't Cyclops. It's, I forget. I'm sorry. I'm missing the name of this artist, but you're welcome to type it in if you remember, because I'm drawing a blank right now. So under participants, oh, there's 15 of you today. That's a good amount. Any of you want to type in who this, what this piece is called? Oopsie, on the right here, I can't remember. It's a very famous painting, but you're welcome to send it in. And then over here, we have Judy Glantzman. She does a lot of okay, so let me just say this. Guess who her best friend is? Her best friend is Don Clements. And if you think about it, they both are using paper, and they're doing really strange out-of-the-box things with paper, but in completely different ways. But now that I've said that, you might see some elements of Don Clements in Judy's work, and maybe some of Judy's work in Don Clements' work. But what you can see here is that, let me get rid of myself again, is that she's layered multiple pieces of paper. There's a figure in here, and this is after Goya's piece right here. It is her description of this piece. She will literally glue actual objects or sculptures into her work. So you can see she's, I wish I could zoom in for you, but I can't. She's put in some little clay masks in the right side here, and she's glued them on to the actual pieces of paper. So there's collage, there's paint, there's drawing, and she does a lot of things all at once. And what I really appreciate about Judy's work is her fearlessness in her work, and her ability to really just do what she feels called to do, without being distracted by galleries and sales and whatever we think people like or want us to create. So I just want everyone to know that that's another thing that I really love about Judy's work. It's a little bit grotesque, it's a little bit weird, it's collaged, it's paper, it's everything that is sort of like a no-no in the art world, and here she is just plugging away at it. Here's another example of her work with collage. You can see that there's even a notebook paper stuck in there with the pieces of holes from being ripped out right there. She's got paint, and this is also her version of this character right here. And again, we have a narrative going on by Goya, and you can see that these children are starving to death. And this has to do with the political times of what was going on in Spain at the time. I don't know, again, all the symbolism of these animals, but I can really appreciate these, especially this painting, because I think it's got such an intense mood to it, and you could just look at it for hours and hours. And I tend to put figures with animals a lot in my paintings, and I think he's just done it in such an interesting way in this painting. And again, Judy Glantzman, it's sort of grotesque. It's sort of ugly. And so it is Goya's in ways. There's some ugly, like hard things to look at here, like this baby in the bottom left corner, or this baby that is, you know, these are basically skeletons, skin and bones that she's handing off to this guy, this animal. So there's a lot going on in these pieces, and I think their ability to talk about tough subjects and still have an element of beauty in them, and also just be raw and in your face and kind of grotesque is another element to that. Oops, didn't mean to do that, sorry. Okay, so here are two more pieces. This one on the bottom here is a really large painting that I had to shrink down so much in order to fit it onto the page, but it's full of little heads, and it is also a comment on this painting up here that is by Goya. And again, we have a group of people who are settling around this creature here, and they are hungry and starving and angry and upset, and you can see that that is what's going on in this painting. There's a lot of shocked looks on their faces and terrified looks on their faces, and this isn't your everyday beauty scene here of a beautiful figure sitting in a chair with their perfect lace outfits. This is real life, in your face. We are hungry, we need food, and this is what's going on in our society today. And then down here you have Judy Glantzman's reaction to that painting. And I hope you pull some of these up online or look at some of the videos that I posted after this so that you can really get a closer look at some of these paintings, because they're just gorgeous. And if you can just Google her and tons of paintings will come up. So here's some of his etching. These are on the left in the white paper. This little drawing is Judy Glantzman, and this one is an etching by Goya. Again, we're looking at figures, but they're not looking totally normal. There's a lot of weirdness going on. There's some humor. There's some grotesqueness. Their dance. This one isn't too bad, but you'll see a lot darker ones. And this figure is sort of a funny guy right here. But I just wanted to. This drawing of Judy's is also from a Goya drawing or etching, but I couldn't find the exact figure. So again, here is a self-portrait of Goya painted here on the right, and a portrait that Judy has made on the left. Again, I think, you know, all these pictures have to do with the same sort of thing. They're about what's really going on in life, what's really going on in our world, how can we portray that, and what do we cover up, and hopefully nothing. She said, you know, it's kind of like having a layer of skin, and you want to peel that back and see what's underneath. So she's really interested in what things are really about and portraying that in her work. And it comes across maybe a little scary or a little grotesque, like I keep saying. Let's go to the next one. Here's a pretty intense photograph, or not photograph, etching or a print on the left-hand side by Goya. You can see that this person has been chopped up, and his arms are tied to the tree, and his head has been severed, and it is also tied to the tree. You can see that these men are tied up, and this is just a pretty intense and dark scene that is going on here, and that is what Goya is known for in his later years, when he started doing this imagery after he went deaf and he really went into sort of a depression, that he starts portraying the politics of life. I'm trying to read what it says. It says big has rasanya. I don't know what a rasanya is. Con muertos, with death. I just don't know what that other word is. And then you have another, you know, Judy's work is, it's almost like looking at someone's spirit rather than looking at the actual person. And it is exactly like what she said, pulling off the outside layer and really seeing the rawness underneath. And she also does a similar thing with the paper where she'll fold it up and unfold it and work on different parts at different times, the same way that Dawn Clements does. But there's more of a grotesqueness to Judy's work and Goya's work than Dawn Clements. And if you miss Dawn Clements, she's a lady whose video you can check out on one of the past lectures 1 or 2 weeks ago. And she does a lot of large-scale paperwork where she unfolds it and makes these large panoramics. Next one. I won't make us look at this one much longer. Okay, here we have some more prints, and here's what I'm talking about when I mean tone. On the left-hand side here, we have a scale of grays that is just really fantastic here. We have our dark darks, we have our mid-grays, and then finally we have highlighted our figures in the foreground. So he carries our eye and tells us where to look and where the most important part of this image is. If anyone's in my landscape class, maybe this reminds you of the glider port that we went to a few weeks ago. We got to see the gliders. And yeah, this piece was really inspiring to me for that reason once I saw this. And I think it's just such a strange image of, you know, these people flying around with their, looks like they're wearing like bat costumes or owl costumes. And I know he had a lot of, he used owls a lot in his imagery in some of the nightmares and pieces that he drew out there. Then we have a figure over here with outstretched arms that sort of mimic the wings that Goya has. I don't think this piece necessarily is copying this Goya piece. It could be. I thought they worked well together, so I put them together. But just another example of how Judy works in another thing about Judy's work, I think, is that she has very finished qualities in some parts and very unfinished qualities in other parts where she leaves the whites of the paper. And that is and maybe even like June Leaf as well. I think her work reminds me a little bit of June Leaf. But very illustrative, very loose, very painterly, and also breaking all the rules. And sort of, again, I'll go back to it, grotesque. Here's another one from the dark prints on the right-hand side. I'm sorry, the quality of this image is not great, but you can see that it's some gargoyles here in the imagery, and he's got a big pair of scissors, and he's cutting off his toenail or his toe. I don't know, but he's giving him a little toenail trim, it looks like, these gargoyles. So pretty weird, funky imagery going on in some of these images. Sometimes they're really playful and funny, and most of them have a bit of humor to them. But again, I want you to take a look here at the tone that they're using. So the lightest part of the image in this piece by Goya is the white of the paper that is behind the gargoyle. Then we have the darkest part of the image literally up next to the lightest part. So that really illuminates and brings our eye right to the middle of the image. And then we have some mid-tone grays that are playing around and dancing around the rest of the print. But sort of, you know, funny, weird, grotesque storytelling narrative going on. And then we have another example of Judy's work. And one thing she does a lot is just draw right on top of her other drawing that she was just working on. So she'll just add little bits of paper all the time, or just keep scribbling on top of scribbling and not really ever getting too attached to different to imagery in the work. But really it's more of a what do I want to say? It's more about the process. I would say her work is really about the process of the work rather than the finished product. This is another large-scale Goya Glantzman, and you can see the folds of the paper, and you can see that she's just got pen and ink scribbles on here, and she really likes hands. She sculpts hands a lot, and she sculpts heads, and she sculpts birds. I don't think I didn't really show any of her sculptures today. They're not as easy to find on online, but she loves hands, and I just thought this was sort of a nice image to end with because it's got flowers, and I believe she walked around with this one in her purse for a year or so and just scribbled on it whenever. She drew people's hands on the subway. I'm sorry this image is not high quality, but this is about nightmares, and this is him sleeping on his desk, and we have all these owls and bats flying out of the imagery, and this is another one of his prints. And I urge you to take a look at more of Goya's work. I'm sure you've seen some of it before, but his work is really unique and beautiful, and I feel like it's something that you know, he gets a lot of credit for his work, but not as much credit as he deserves. I'll say that. I think this painting right here is my favorite, with the weightlessness and the movement of the figures and the hats, and just such a good painting, compositionally, color, story, everything. So, and it's already 1:30. Okay, so next week we're going to have a review of all of the lessons. So I'll show a few images of each artist that I talked about this semester. If you didn't get a chance to see one of the lessons, that would be a good time to get an overview of what we talked about and what the themes were for the classes. And I will be teaching this class again in the fall with a whole new set of artists. So if you like it and you want to keep joining us, we'll just keep the same time and keep going, but there will be a 2-week break between next week and then the first class starts September 6th, I think, 6th or 7th. And the registration date will be, let me look. It's on a Tuesday. The registration will be September 4th on a Tuesday from 10:30 to 12:30 at the Jewish Community Center. If you don't want to go in and sign up, you don't have to. You can just email me and I can give you the access code. They just gave them to me, so I do have them. If you want to sign up for that, feel free to email me. And we'll just keep going with more and more great artists. If there's an artist that you want to hear about, please send me an email, and I will see if I have a good comparison, whether it's a contemporary artist or an artist from art history, and we can start showing some artists that maybe you are really interested in learning about. Okay, that's all I have for today. Have a great week, everybody. Stay cool. Drink water, don't get dehydrated, and see you next week. Bye.
Bye-bye. Well done.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Nope, I have a comment. I have a chat. Oh, yeah. Oh, Saturn. Saturn was the monster in the figure. That's good. Thank you, Joanne. All right, stop share.